So to come back further to your question, I would not be investing $4.2 billion, that'll probably be $6 billion, or on the viaduct replacement, or $6 billion, that'll probably be $8 billion on the 520 interchange. That's $10 billion that we're spending on a transportation infrastructure from the last century, and I think that money should be spent on building a real transit infrastructure.
What about other modes for the transportation budget? Would you look at more bicycle pedestrian?
So, yeah. It's ironic. Cascade endorsed my opponent, but told me that I was better on their issues than he is. I think that the bicycle master plan is a great start, but share rows and those bike lanes that go between parked cars and moving traffic are not a solution. I mean, for somebody that's relatively young and fit, it's probably okay for you. Relatively okay for me too, probably. I'm not that old yet, but my mom, I don't think so, and my kids, no way. I want to see it be possible to get from neighborhood to neighborhood on bike paths that are actually safe and safe for everybody. And so I think that means taking the cars off the road. I mean, where else in the world do you get to store your personal private property, 2,000 pounds, 10 feet long and whatever feet wide, for free on public space? I mean, it's just, and the notion that that is like somehow birthright, I think needs to be adjusted. So I think it's important to identify corridors between our neighborhoods and between the corridors of downtown and create really safe and inviting bike paths.
Seattle's a growing city with new residents moving into the proximity. Where do you support density? Where would you exclude density being developed?
I think the way it makes the most sense to increase density, there's 140,000 people are expected to move here over the next 30 years. The only way that we can accommodate them and still meet our greenhouse emission goals and also create, frankly, a much better, more livable, walkable city is to increase that density in the urban villages and urban centers that have already been identified, and leaving the density out of the more residential bedroom communities in town. I think one of the greatest travesties of the last 10 years has been all of those 4-pack and 6-pack townhouses that have gone up in otherwise residential areas. It's lowish density development. It's not the kind of density that makes transit more feasible. It's not the kind of density that gives you enough people to create a really vibrant sort of neighborhood and supporting business districts and that sort of thing. I think it makes far more sense socially, culturally, environmentally to increase the density in all of the little downtowns in Ballard and all around town, and around the business districts essentially, and then connect those with real rapid transit.
David, if I was interested to see in your questionnaire, you're in favor of compacted, walkable developments and neighborhoods, but you raised a question as to whether towers are appropriate, and suggested that shorter developments might be better. And I was wondering if you could expand on your thinking there and the same way you mean.
So there are a couple of ways you can approach density, right? There's the Shanghai model, and there's the Barcelona model. And Barcelona actually has greater urban density than Shanghai, but you would never know it looking at it. And it's compact, it's walkable, it is beautiful, great open spaces, just enough activity on the sidewalks to make it enjoyable and fun to be out there, and fun to sit in a sidewalk cafe and watch everybody go by and all that sort of thing. To say that I don't think the towers are necessary doesn't mean I don't think there's any role for towers or any place to put them. I mean, I think downtown and Belltown and places like that, it absolutely makes sense. And there are a lot of people who love to live in high rises, but not everybody does. And I think what I was addressing there was the concerns that came up. I was in some really heated meetings this spring over the transit-oriented development bill.
Oh yeah.
And
there were some
people
heated meetings.
down at the Columbia City Community Council who were red-faced and screaming and calling each other names, and it was because they had visions of Mount Baker becoming Belltown, essentially, when the bill wouldn't have caused anything like that at all. I mean, the Mount Baker station is currently, I think, at 42 homes per acre, and what it was calling for was 50. So I mean, the difference between there was not enough to, turn Mount Baker into the next Belltown. But that's what I was addressing there. What I'm saying essentially is that you don't have to have the high rises to get enough density to make transit viable, or to make great walkable communities viable.
What do you think about the recent news over the DADUs?
I support them. I don't personally have a problem with them. I mean, I think I lived in one in the Bay Area, and I loved it. And it's a way to get greater density into some parts of the city where we might not otherwise be able to find much room. And it also is a way to accommodate, we're sort of seeing what looks like the beginnings of a trend towards more extended families, living together, parents moving in with their kids later on in life and stuff. And I mean, that's really where the mother-in-law term came from originally. And I think it makes a great deal of sense to allow that. I mean, whatever we can do we have an aging population, whatever we can do to allow, especially elders who have family nearby, to live with their families and that sort of thing, I think that's it's a benefit.
One of our questions in the questionnaire was about the multifamily housing rezone, and you stated support for it, and I just wanted to share some of my thoughts and see what your response might be. It seems kind of odd to be completely doing the legal rules for how multifamily housing can be built in the city when we haven't finished a new neighborhood planning process, and the council next year is going to be considering a new comprehensive plan or significant amendments looking out towards 2040 growth goals. And so, I mean, we might end up immediately with a very outmoded zoning code that, if anything, makes only marginal improvements to what we already have. Like, we'll still end up with 4-packs. They might have a few more windows, but they'll still be kind of that 4-pack design. So I was just wondering what your response might be to those thoughts.
To the extent, now I was at a couple of the meetings where they were presenting the new multifamily code, and it didn't look to me from the way it was presented like we would still be ending up with the 4-packs. And if that is actually the case, then I wouldn't support changing it, because the main purpose of changing it is to make sure that that's not the sort of development we're seeing in town, as far as I can tell. And that's what people are really upset about. That's what I'm upset about. I think those things are horrible. I've traveled a lot, and I've lived in a number of different places, and I've never seen those monstrosities. They don't exist in other cities. I mean, even like in Portland or Vancouver that are close to us, they don't have those things. They're really just specific to Seattle's land use code, and to the extent that the modification won't get rid of that, then why do it? Because that's really what the goal needs to be. The goal needs to be making sure that we are developing better.
But at the same time, the townhouse or row house is definitely a compelling option.
I love row
houses. It's an affordable option for families.
But
I know where you're going, but I just wanted to, right?
Yeah, no.
Right, they have their own.
I live in High Point. There are townhouses directly across the street from me that are great, charming places with front porches and nice architecture. But those things are not an example of that. They're just monstrosities that are created by developers trying to maximize their profit under their current land use code and not employing architects and that kind of thing.